Hi, and thanks for joining us at the Toronto Raptors Coaches Open House. My name is Jon Goodwillie. I'm assistant coach for the Toronto Raptors, and today we're going to be talking about some end-of-game situations, really talk a little bit about our philosophies, some tips on some different situations that could help you as you encounter certain situations in games as you move forward. And as we all know, a high percentage of games are decided by, less than 5 or 6 points. At the NBA level, it's about 33% are decided by 2 possessions. So a couple things that we like to really hone in on for us personally. First is knowing the tendencies of your opponent, and the level that you're coaching at, that may or may not be possible. But for us, we certainly keep track of what opposing coaches' tendencies are in games, and that's something that can happen throughout a game and also over time. You face the same coaches over time, and you can start to learn their tendencies and what they like to do. So whether they're a team that likes to rely on switching or maybe trying to double team or maybe even trying to play some zone, we definitely try to make sure that we're familiar with the tendencies of our opponents before the game, and that can help us as these late game situations unfold. End of game plays, really they're the hardest ones to execute, for a number of reasons. Obviously, the defense is really amped up and keyed in on executing, and but also, you've got certain time constraints that you're working within in end of game plays. So you're down 3 and there's 8 seconds left. You've got to be able to create something in that amount of time, or whatever the time is. And then also, generally we find that there's fewer fouls called before the ball gets inbounds. There's a lot of grabbing and holding that's going on, and after the ball's inbounded and a player's making a drive to the rim potentially, a lot of times the refs tend to limit the whistles unless it's really extreme contact. So that's another reason that makes it difficult to execute and succeed some end of game plays. It's really most important for coaches to be organized beforehand, before going into these situations. Certainly practicing end of game situations is a big part of that. There's nothing wrong with having a lot of your end of game plays drawn out beforehand, and certainly there's a lot of situations that you can practice with your team that's going to help you better prepare for those end of game possessions, and also give your players confidence that they can execute the plays and coverages that you want to try to do at the end of a game. As a staff in the past, we've always had discussion about when in practice do you practice end of game situations, and sometimes there's a natural tendency to put that off towards the end of practice, but I think it's really important to do that. Think about your practices and the end of them. Sometimes the players have, they've either lost interest, they're potentially either physically or mentally fatigued and not really focusing in on key points, or may not be able to retain the important points that you're trying to impart on them. So we try to mix it up, in our practices throughout the year in terms of when we practice end of game situations. So definitely, trying to sprinkle them in. Sometimes there's no way to avoid it. You got to practice it at the end of practice, but trying to do it earlier in practice when minds and bodies are fresher can be very advantageous to you, and really can help your players retain what you're trying to coach them. Another thing that we've done in the past, and we experimented with this last year at training camp, is to really practice against different defenses and force your team to execute the same play multiple times against the same defense. So you draw up a play, and you have to go run it 3 times against the same defense in a row. And you have your clock and your sort of time score situation, and you draw up your play. And what ends up happening is the defense gets better and better and better at guarding that situation. And so you make them run the play 3 times against hard defense. They have to execute it that much better as they practice it against the same defense, as the defense starts to figure out what's coming at them a little bit. So that's a good opportunity as well to practice what you're going to end up encountering when you get into a game. So what I've done today is I've kind of pulled out, this is always a good Q&A type of topic, because coaches have all encountered different situations and have different philosophies, and so because we're not going to be able to have that Q&A today, I've kind of pulled out some of the more common situations and some stuff that we've encountered as a team over the last 2 seasons. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a couple scenarios offensively, maybe talk about what we did, talk a little bit about defense in those scenarios, and then I want to talk about a good chunk of just defensive concepts in the end of the game, which can be sometimes overlooked when you're talking about how you're going to guard different scenarios and situations to close out games, and then a couple more scenarios at the end on the offensive side. So to start with, I want to talk about what happens in a tie game situation, and I pulled this clip from last season, and you can see we've got Danny Green inbounding the ball. It's a tie game. There's 13 seconds left, and one of the philosophies that we have for tie game situations is you really want to impart on your team that there's 2 options. We win the game, or we win it in overtime. We win it in regulation, or we win it in overtime. We're not allowing any time on the clock to remain for the other team who, may or may not have a timeout, but we're not giving them any time to, if we don't score, to get another shot off, another possession off, or if they do score, a chance to tie it back up. So that's really important. And to that end, what we like to focus on is encouraging our players to get to an open jump shot in these parts of the game. As I touched on briefly earlier, there's a tendency to really, encourage players to drive at the end of the game and force the referees to make a call. But we find that the officials generally, they're not willing to make those calls late in the game unless it's really, really obvious contact or anything that's kind of like 50-50 call, they're not going to call it. And so we feel like in isolation situations, have players work on, getting to the elbows, getting to 17 feet, and vaulting up over the defender when he's on his heels. And we think that's a good shot and a good way to attack an end-of-game situation. So what we've got here is kind of just kind of a curl play to get the ball in. So just a little bit of a curl to get the defense kind of back on its heels. And then we end up getting the ball to Pascal here. And so this was a year ago, and you can see he's dribbling down the clock, right? He gets the ball with, 9-10 seconds on the clock, and he takes it all the way down till he can get to a spot where he can attack. And he ends up attacking to his left and finishing this one on the off the glass and in. And it was really an incredible finish, perfect timing. He got the shot off so that there's no time left. So whether he makes or misses that, we're still in a good position. Obviously, he makes it, and we win the game. Now, I talked about how we encourage our players to look for a jump shot in this situation. Pascal, he's probably a better driver than he is a shooter, but also when you look at the contact that comes over here from Ayton, that's a pretty good shot blocker, and that's some pretty heavy contact on a finish, and the referees don't end up calling it. So it just kind of, it's to our point of that sometimes it's easier to look for a jump shot where you can elevate over the defense than it is to put it in the hands of the referees. Again, Pascal makes a great play, a great finish. It's an unbelievable finish, a running left hand off glass, over a great shot blocker, and that won us the game last year. I want to just touch on, as I go forward with these clips as well, some things that the defense can think about in the same scenario. All right, so if you were Phoenix here, 13 seconds left, you know that we're going to hold it for last shot. Score's tied. We know that we're going to hold it and run the clock down as much as possible. This is a great opportunity to be super aggressive on any inbounds pass, and they're talking about like trying to deny. So look how easy it is for Kyle to just pop back and get a catch to get the ball in. If you go for a steal here and you don't get it, we're not going to go try and score it anyways. You should know that we're going to hold for last shot. So being, bodies on bodies all the way across that line there, and making it more difficult for us to get in, trying to get a deflection out of bounds, a steal, or maybe just trying to disrupt the rhythm of what we're trying to do. And then one other thing, just really interesting point here, is that this is great design by Coach to keep Kyle high in the slot and get your best three-point shooter right there. And you know that this defender is not going to leave Kyle. He's not going to give Kyle the shot to win the game. And I think Pascal realizes that too, and he realizes that this gap here is going to open up for him because this defender is so worried about Kyle. So an opportunity maybe it's a good job by their defense to stay with their key shooters, but at the end of the day, they probably could have been a little bit more physical and a little bit more aggressive to start the possession, and that could have disrupted us a little bit more. The next scenario I'm going to talk about is being up in a game, being up big, kind of late game situation, and this is really about, this is just one quick clip, but it kind of leads into the next clip as well, and it's really about just defending the three-point line. You can see that Norm and Pascal are both doing the job. We've got a good lead. We're willing to concede, 2-pointers, but we don't want to give up threes to give them the momentum to get back in the game. So, we move with the ball up the floor. We concede the early two, trying to stay home with good corner shooters. And then really important, is when you get scored on, you've got to be thinking about getting the ball in quickly, right? So as soon as this ball goes in, we've got to be taking the ball out of bounds and thinking about getting it in quick. Always think about getting it in quick. Maybe it doesn't work and you'll have to burn a timeout. Maybe you can't find anyone open, but getting it in quick to a good free throw shooter is always your first option in these late game situations when you're playing with a lead. And Kyle does a good job of getting it in. They kind of get their press set up a little bit. We eventually do get it in, and we're just not in a good scenario. They do get a trap, and so we end up calling a timeout in the backcourt, which is always a good option if you've got them available, but really important that you train your team. If you're going to concede the points, try to get the ball inbounds quickly. Kyle does a good job of getting it out, and they do a good job of picking up full court and trying to take away any easy inbounds passes. And just a quick point on this as well, to what Memphis does. This was down when we were in Orlando. Memphis gets the ball in, and they take the easy 2 points, and that's really important. A lot of times, a player, when you're down, it could be 4 or 5, it could be more, a player will come down and take a really difficult three-point shot here because you feel like you need a 3. But really, the defense is giving you 2, and so you got to take it. And obviously, as the clock winds down a little bit more, you might have to be a little bit more aggressive going for threes. But when you've got a lot of time left, take the free points. It's a 100% shot, right? If Morant comes down and tries to take a tough 3, we're going to be there to contest it. It's a low percentage shot, and if it doesn't go in, the game's pretty well over, right? But he keeps the game alive. That gives them 2 points. Now he forces us to make more plays. We have to make an inbounds play. We have to try to move the ball forward and advance it across the half court. And at the end of the day, you can force your team into taking additional timeouts, and you just give yourself more life by taking the easy points. On this next clip, the situation changes a little bit. And the reason I say that is, obviously, so we're still down 4. It's a 2-possession game. But a little bit less time, and also we're short on timeouts. We don't have any timeouts left. We've just taken our last one. And so this is one where you maybe have a bit of an option, but as your play to get a shot wears down, the other team's going to inbound it and foul, and then you're going to have to go, with whatever time is left, you're going to have to go the length of the court. So here's an opportunity to be a little bit more aggressive looking for the 3, because the clock is down and because you don't have any timeouts. And so in this example, we end up running just a quick cross. We were looking for Pascal here at the top to see if he could go for a quick handoff. In the end, we've got our outlet, Kyle, all the way in the backcourt, who they're not denying. And he brings it up the floor. And this is a shot that Kyle's good at taking. And that's part of the reason why it also makes sense for us to do that. Kyle's a good shooter, obviously from distance. He's a good shooter off the bounce, which not everybody is. He still shoots a good percentage off the bounce. And you can say he brings us up the right side of the floor, but he's thinking about getting to his left hand for that pull-up the whole way. He makes the 3, and that gets us right back in the game. San Antonio ends up calling a timeout after this, but as soon as he makes that shot, you've got to be thinking about getting your press set up because they're going to try to inbound it. We've got it to a 1-point game now. A quick foul, turnover, deflection, anything like that can help you win another possession and try to get the ball back. But I think really important is that there is no set rules on, this is going to be, you always go for 2 or you always go for 3 when it's a 2-possession game. The score, the timeout situation, that's going to dictate a lot as well. So you have to kind of develop your philosophy a little bit about that as you move forward as a coach. I think just to talk about San Antonio's defense here, the big thing that they do that they can improve upon is that they've got to be switching to take Kyle's 3 away. When you've got a multiple possession lead, you want to take away 3s. You don't want to give baskets in this situation, but you definitely don't want to give up 3s to our best 3-point shooter. So being up and more aggressive at the point of this screen would make it more difficult for Kyle to step into this and still shoot a fairly rhythm jump shot. So that's probably the main thing that defensively you can take away from that clip. I'd like to kind of move forward on a couple things defensively because defense is, you don't think necessarily about your defense as much in late game situations. So on the defensive side of the ball, a couple key points that we really focus on when we're facing an end of game situation. The first one for me and for most of us here, I think we're really big proponents of ball pressure, pressuring that inbounds pass and making it difficult for him. The active hands, the high, following his eyes and jumping to the ball. Some coaches like to, lay off with that inbound defender and maybe he provides some support on the first cutter that comes free. But more often than not, I'm a big proponent of pressuring the ball and making that pass, that inbounds pass, really difficult to complete. For us, in the NBA level, and probably for a lot of coaches out there, switching is a big part of what happens at the end of games, and before the ball gets in and after the ball gets in. And I think that's a constant discussion point in terms of when do you start switching, what personnel do you have on the floor so that you can switch if you'd like to. And for me personally, I always think that the lower the clock, the more likely I am to switch. So just an example on that is, let's say that we're down under 3 seconds here. So you're probably thinking that under 3 seconds, you're probably looking at a catch and shoot situation, right? So let's say you've got a player here, an offensive player here, and you're guarding it here. If this player is going to be the player that ends up coming this way for the shot, this defender is in a position to switch out and take away a look at the 3-point line better than this defender is to stay connected coming off here. If this is a good screen set here, then this defender is going to have a tough time staying connected and riding him and taking away that 3-point shot. Whereas this defender won't have the bodies to contend with, and he can take a straight line coming out there to try to take away that. And that's a low clock situation. We're probably looking at 3 to 4 seconds or less, trying to limit catch and shoot opportunities at the 3-point line. Another scenario, same concept. Another scenario, would be here, is if this player goes to screen a man to the corner. This is an opportunity for this defender to switch out and take that away, and then you're getting into a straight denial, so not even letting them a look at a 3-point shot. And then this defender would have to slide underneath and make sure he doesn't give up the basket. Again, time and score really impact these situations a lot. Whether you're up 2 or up 3 might change how much switching you want to do. Certainly when you're up 3, you want to make sure that you're taking away the 3-point line as much as possible. And another part of switching that's important to talk about with your players is a lot of times we'll be in the huddle and we'll say that we're not going to switch before the ball comes inbounds. But then in that time between the huddle breaking and as a coach you get to see the alignment that's set up there, maybe you see a switch that could be valuable. And we try to give our players the license to talk out some switches if they see that a good situation could present itself based on the alignment. So again, I'll take a look at some similar scenarios again. So when we're over here in the huddle, we're basically saying we're not going to switch before the ball is inbounds. Inbounder's got it over here, but then all the players start coming out onto the court, and we see a guard line up there, and we see a guard line up here. And we've got 2 guard defenders. These 2 guard defenders, and as a coach from the sideline, you should be thinking, you know what? If these 2 guys come together, it's not going to create too much of an issue. Let's say we've got Fred and Kyle. We've got similar size, similar capable defenders here. Any type of screening action here, that should be a switch. Even though we were over here and we were just talking about saying that we're not going to, this gives you an opportunity to, an easy one, based on the alignment that you see and you feel comfortable in your personnel's ability to communicate it and comfortable with their ability to execute it. So again, another example, guard to guard. You know, if you have similar personnel, again, this is a good opportunity to talk out your switches before the ball is in play, even if the plan coming out of the timeout, you know, wasn't to do that. And I think that's a really important point for coaches, is that as soon as you break that huddle, you should be thinking about what the alignment is going to be coming onto the floor. So you should be starting to look for who's going to come into their spots and looking for opportunities that maybe it could be a matchup that needs to be switched based on where the alignment is. But when that huddle gets braked and you have confidence that your players are going out in the floor comfortable with the game plan, you should be looking at what's the alignment and what are the opportunities to start messing with the play that you think might be coming with. And it could be that these two players here don't end up crossing, you know, and obviously then you're staying with your own. If this guard takes a step and then ends up coming back here, you're staying with your own. If this guard ends up flashing into this area for a pass, he's staying with his own. But you're preparing for, if these 2 guys are together and come together, that they can talk out a switch that may not have been in the game plan beforehand. A couple other things from the defensive side of the ball, obviously, is you know, in the situation when you're up 3, do you foul or do you not foul? And this is one that you know, all the numbers kind of tell us that it really is pretty even, your odds of winning, whether you foul or not, or you don't foul up 3. And I think if you talk to enough coaches, there's enough on each side of the argument or the discussion to say that there's a lot of support for both methods. For me personally, I'm a proponent of fouling, but it's really important from my perspective that if you're going to do it, it is something that you practice. You know, it's not something that you just spring on your team at the end of a game. It's something that you need to work on in practice to talk about when are the right times to do it. And 2 times that can be really important are, 1, if a player is not facing the basket. So let's say, you know, a player comes in and he catches it, the basket's back that way, and he's kind of caught it like this. That's a good opportunity before he can kind of face up and claim that he's in a shooting motion to foul, to wrap him up before he can get the shot off. And the other one is on the dribble, right? If a player comes in, catches, and he puts the ball down, you can foul him and put him on the line. And from my experiences, we've had good success doing it, executing it well. We have practiced it as a team and as a staff. We have practiced it at times. Now, if it's really, really low clock, and again, you know, I would say maybe under 3 seconds, 2, 3, 4 seconds, you might be looking at a catch and shoot play. And so then you have to trust your players to know that when it's really low clock, you're probably more going to be looking to get a contest, unless a player takes a dribble and you can foul him. But you know, there's a difference between 7 seconds on the clock in terms of what an opposing team can do, and 2 or 3 seconds on the clock. And so the lower on the clock, the more likely it's going to be a catch and shoot play, and you want to make sure that you're probably taking your fouls off at that point and encouraging them to not execute those fouls, and just encouraging them to get a great contest on the shot, deny the pass if possible. One of the other things that fouling does is it forces your opposition out of timeouts. In our league we have the advance rule, and so if a team takes a timeout to set up a play, you foul, they shoot their free throws, you've still got the lead, you can work some time off the clock, you're going to probably go down the other end and foul. Maybe then they're going to have to attack without timeouts and have to look for a 2 or a 3, but a lot of times a 3, having to go the full length of the floor without a timeout, and that's an even better situation for you as a coach to win. And again, these aren't rules; these are philosophies that coaches need to develop on their own ahead of time. Going back to a couple other scenarios, I've just got a couple more, and this is the common one. This is the down 3, and the reason I put this one in is that I wanted to talk a little bit about man versus zone. I know a lot of coaches at different levels, you probably encounter a lot of different man and zone defenses, and for us in the NBA, zone defense is a lot more popular than it was a few seasons ago, and so we're seeing a lot more of it. This is from when I coached Summer League a couple summers ago, and it was the reason I chose this play is that they were playing man and zone defense down the stretch of the game in the third and a lot in the fourth quarter, and one of the things you can do against when you're not sure if they're going to run man or zone is a pin-in play. And before I show you the video of it, I'll just show you kind of what I'm talking about. So basically what we did is we ran, our shooter was here and our screener was here. So a pin-in play is going to bring this player, he could start anywhere on this side of the floor, bring him to the corner, and have this big here be the screener for him. So what ends up happening is if you're guarding this shooter, if you're guarding this shooter, it's a tough angle to beat this screen and still be able to take away that 3. You gotta choose your route, and either way it can be difficult to take away the catch and the shot in that situation. And so having this big come and set this screen as this man's coming out, a lot of times that frees up that shooter coming off. Now just to talk about it against the zone, now when this big comes down and there's your shooter there, you're probably looking at some sort of alignment like that defensively. Now this big's just got to find the outside of the zone and set that. This man has, whoever this outside of the zone is, he's going to have responsible for everything in this area here. So if that screener can come down and seal him in, that's going to free up that shooter to get a good look in the corner. So that's why I chose this play, because I wasn't sure what defense they were going to run, and I thought that either way we'd be able to get a good look for one of our better shooters. So this was Jordan Lloyd, and when Chris runs down, he does a good job of sealing the outside of the zone. San Antonio decides to come out and zone here, and he ends up sealing that player and getting the ball into Jordan. And there's a lot that happens on this play, and he just misses that shot. It was a pretty good look though that we created on this action, and felt confident about this opportunity coming out of the timeout because of the way they had been playing us. I think there's certainly a lot going on this play, and something I'm going to show and talk about on the next clip is the importance of treating every cut live. And you can see here, this is DeJuan Hernandez down here on the sort of in the ball side corner, and he's not really involved in this play. It's not for him, but he cuts out with some speed, and that just draws this man with him out of position. And that makes it that much easier for Chris to find him and screen him in. So it's really important that you stress to your players that all the cuts alive, especially on these end of game plays. You don't know how the defense is going to react to something, and you want to make sure that you're cutting hard and getting players open, because as we know, it's really difficult to score at the end of games when the defense is amped up. A couple things I want to talk about just defensively. I talked a little bit about ball pressure earlier, and I think ball pressure on this clip by the inbounder is really an important part of what defends the play. There's a miscommunication behind this defender. There's a miscommunication allowing the shooter to come free, but he's showing good length and he's reading the eyes of the inbounder, and he ends up I think maybe just forcing that pass a little bit offline from where Malcolm, who was inbounding it, would have liked to have thrown it. I think if Malcolm could throw that one again, he would probably hope to get it just a little bit more to the front side of Jordan as he's turning into this shot, and that's all created by ball pressure. Malcolm wants to make sure that he gets the ball in and gets it in the hands of his shooter when he's there, and this defensively forces it to be a very difficult or a more difficult pass. So a really interesting play there. I really, the guys executed it pretty well, and sometimes the ball goes in and sometimes it doesn't, but it was pretty good execution overall in a tough late game situation. The next one I want to talk about here is, this is a recent one. This happened for us down in Orlando. And, talking about how all cuts are live, this is kind of the epitome of that. And this is a play we've had a lot of success with over the years. So you can see the first cut here, first the scenario, obviously we're low clock here. So we're looking at a catch and shoot play, and down 2. So, obviously the defense has to play everything honest. It's not like they can just take away the 3-point line. They've got to kind of guard everything. But I think this is a play we've had some success with over the years. Some of you may remember last year in Orlando, we had Danny Green in Fred's spot, and he came off this screen and he caught it there and he hit a shot that ended up being the game winner. And so that first cut is obviously really, that it's a live option, and having plays, in particular in a down 2 play, having plays that create looks at twos or threes are important on the play. Probably even more of you remember that in Game 7 against Philadelphia, we ran Kawhi off a similar action to where Pascal is here. The ball was on the other side of the floor, but it was a similar type of action where Kawhi came to the top to get the catch and ended up creating an unbelievable shot. Again, Boston does a really good job of taking away the first couple options on this play, but they do forget about the option that's on the weak side, and that ends up being the one that wins the game for us. This was, and again, all cuts are live. We've never really looked for OG on this play. We're just trying to get him to take defenders with him out of the play to create open space for someone else. But as you can see, there's miscommunication on the backside, and he ends up springing free. There's so much that happens on this play. It's incredible. I want to talk a little bit defensively about this, because some of the concepts I've talked about earlier in the open house are on display here. You can see Marcus Smart and Jaylen Brown. They're talking about whether they're going to be switching if this happens. Boston is basically in a bit of a zone on this play. Smart's going to take anything that comes to the top of the floor. Tatum's going to take anything that comes to the corner. And so you can see that's a pretty long trade-off that Smart just lets Fred run free and get him open. But he does a good job of talking out this last switch. But what doesn't happen is this switch on the baseline. Really this is supposed to be Brown, who should hang back with OG. But he gets sucked into Pascal, who's obviously probably a presumed threat in an end-of-game situation coming off. And then Mark does just enough to get in the way of Jaylen Brown here and just make it difficult for him to get out there and get to OG in time. And then the last thing I want to talk about here is the ball pressure. So let's just focus in on this little circle here. They put one of the biggest players in the NBA on the ball, which is strategically a good thing to do. I would say his ball pressure is okay. His length is great, obviously, but he's maybe not putting Kyle under quite enough duress. And then just look what Kyle does. Just a great veteran move. Look at how far back he is from the sideline, right? That's what opens up your passing angle a little bit more. It just gives you a little bit more room to work with. And in the gyms you're playing in, you should, especially if you've got an inbounder who may be, a guy that you trust, but he may not be as big as some of your other players. Encourage him to step back from the sideline a little bit if the gym allows it, and that's going to give him a little bit more of a good angle to be able to throw any type of pass that he could encounter. So a lot happened on that play. It was obviously a lot of fun. It was a great moment while we were down there, and it was a great shot by OG. But really, the key of that is the importance of obviously running every cut live and trying to have plays that have multiple options available to your players, because you don't know how the defense is going to react in a game. So those are kind of the main situations that I had pulled. Being up, being down 3, being tied. A lot of the main ones that you'll focus on. A multi-possession game. So hopefully there's some nuggets you can take out of this and can apply to your own teams. I think it's really important that when it comes to end of games, you start preparing to win end of games long before you get into those situations. I think there's kind of an idea that coaches just go into the timeout and draw something up that's going to get them a 3-point shot. The reality of the situation is a lot of times, these late game plays are rehearsed and practiced, throughout the course of the season, in the hopes that something can work late in the game and help you win a game. And I think it's really important that as a coach, you develop your philosophies on how you want to attack some different situations. You practice them, and then it's really important that you're prepared, because you don't know how a game's going to unfold, and you want to have as many situations covered off as possible. So having plays that give you multiple options, that's always a really important part. And again, practicing end of game plays gives you confidence in executing them. It gives your players confidence in what you're doing and how you're going to execute them when it comes time to win the game on the floor. I want to thank you all for joining us at the Coach's Open House. It's been a lot of fun to be able to share some of this with you, and I hope it's been helpful, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And I want to leave all of you with one last challenge, and that is, I know a lot of the coaches that are watching today are teachers or are parents. And what I want to leave you with and encourage you to do and challenge you to do is to find a way to, if you're a teacher, assign a book or an article that's been written by a minority to your students. Encourage them to learn from people who come from different backgrounds than they do. Or potentially, it could be giving a student an opportunity to read something that's written by someone from the same background that they haven't had the chance to. It's so important to learn from other people, learn from different perspectives, and a lot of you have the opportunity to impart that approach to a lot of young, impressionable minds, and it's a huge opportunity to do that. So please, I encourage you, I challenge you, if you're a teacher, if you're a parent, find a way to assign a book written by a minority to help your students, your young people, the future people of our country, learn from people from different perspectives. And I think that can really, it's really about doing a lot of small things that can help create big change. Thanks a lot, and enjoy the rest of the day.